On today's show, Aquaman once again. Wait a minute, that's not a picture of Aquaman. Captain Marvel could do $140 million at the box office. What's better than that? A picture of the Punisher with a dog. Movie Talk starts right now.
He looks so cute.
I mean, it's just everything you want out of life right there. You want just a badass from the Marvel universe,
with
a
puppies.
dog with a puppy. But that's not what we're talking about with Mr. Bernthal. No, we have plenty of information on that and a whole lot of other stuff to get to. Hey, welcome to Movie Talk. It's a new week, and that is a brand new panelist to the show. Kristy Puchko is here, flying in from New York City. I know you're a freelance critic. You do a lot of writing for Pajiba, and you were at the Critics' Choice Awards last night.
I was Perry's guest. She and I have been friends for a really long time, and we went to last night, and it was so much fun because you just get to kind of rub elbows and get to celebrate things you're really excited about, and it was really great. We got to talk to the directors of Spider-Verse, which I know you guys are very familiar with them.
Yes, we are.
I hadn't had the chance to talk to them, so it was, and then not only do I love the movie and do I have a lot of feelings about the Spider-Men's and women's, but I'm a real animation nerd, so I was just really excited. Can we talk about frame rate? And when you guys did the thing with the color displacement, and it was really fun to get to talk to them. And then they were like, oh, and this is so-and-so, and they worked on the Grinch movie. And I was like, I have a lot of thoughts on the Grinch movie, too. So it was really fun last night to, because my job is to professionally talk about things I like or don't like, but it's a really exciting moment when you get to just be happy with them, because
Yeah, and everybody's dressed up, and you're hobnobbing, and there's drinks involved, and it seems like a really good time. I did not go to the Critics' Choice Awards. I had football to watch, John Rocha, and you clearly from that, that's an odd-looking Washington Redskins logo, but your team did advance to the NFC Championship game.
They did, yeah. And I remember when Perry took me to Critics' Choice Awards 3 years ago. Don't get used to it. She changes every year. She takes someone new just when you think you're the flavor of the month. But no, I'm glad you...
I'm a pretty great date. Yeah. I do say so myself.
She has been to the Meatball Shop many times in New York City.
Oh,
That's where Perry took us.
Yeah, that was good times.
We're all fans of meatballs here. Yeah. And the first story we have to get to is actually something that we found out about 5-10 minutes ago. That's the exciting part of doing Movie Talk on my calendar when I wake up at 4 p.m. PST. Christopher Mcquarrie, ladies and gentlemen, you heard of him. He's directed a lot of the Mission Impossible movies, most recent ones, and he has just signed on to write and direct the next 2 films. These films are going to be shot back to back and are scheduled tentatively to be released in the summer of 2021 and 2022. So they're shooting them Avengers style, and there's no details on what exactly Mr. Mcquarrie is going to write. But my question to my panelists here is an interesting one, because we're maybe excited that Christopher McQuarrie is coming back. He's done a great job with this series. Is there something else going on here as far as the movies back to back? Could this be the close of the Ethan Hunt saga as far as Mission Impossible movies go, Kristy?
I'm sorry, are you saying that young man Tom Cruise might be trying to bring a nice close? No, but do you remember in The Mummy where they're like, young man?
Oh, ridiculous.
Look, he looks amazing for his age. He looks amazing for my age. Props to him. But there's a point where, on the last one, he wildly injured himself, and he does do his own stunts. And I think that there has to be a close to his time. And if you remember, there was that time where they were like, Jeremy Renner's going to take over, and then that never came to be. I think I think the announcement of this is going to be a 2-part farewell to the Ethan Hunt we know, and then why not continue the franchise? People love this franchise.
And Rocha, it also makes sense just from a stunt performance standpoint that let's get Tom Cruise while he's as healthy as he can be. Let's not wait another couple years between movies. So let's just have him attempt all the crazy stunts he wants to in this one concise chunk of time, and then maybe he rides off into the sunset. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, rides off on the space shuttle. That's how it ends, with him doing last stunt on the space shuttle, out into space, hanging off the side with one helmet on.
And she's in the shuttle, looking through with her hand on
Michelle
the glass.
Monaghan in the shuttle, looking back, going, he's always been with me. It's
Chris,
perfect.
We're available. You can call us. I'm ready for this.
I think it's a smart move, too, doing back-to-back, be done with them. Mcquarrie's also doing a writing or a treatment on the Top Gun 2, or he's writing a little bit about it as well, changing it around. So Tom Cruise obviously trusts Mcquarrie with a lot of his work. It's found his muse, so to speak. So knocking these out back-to-back also takes care of that problem, which you brought up, Kristy, the idea that he's old. And it's true. He is. And you're right. The Mummy was ridiculous. He should have never had... Well, is that him now? Is that Mcquarrie?
My phone is on airplane mode.
triggered
the
by
record,
Mcquarrie.
it's on airplane mode. I don't know why that's happening. I'm
but,
sorry.
You know, him being with that actress from Peaky Blinders, it was just ridiculous how that worked out in The Mummy. So it's nice to see that with this, they're going to probably maintain this situation with Michelle Monaghan as a contact, not as his wife, obviously, and go forward with that. But we'll see him do some more action stuff. And then, yes, I agree with you, Mark. I think he rides off into the sunset. He's done and hands the Ethan Hunt mantle, a la James Bond, off to someone else. A Renner was the rumor when he was on Rogue Nation, but now I don't know who it'll be.
Ooh, could it be Henry Cavill's mustache? Can we retcon that?
Not only the mustache, but also the pump and the guns. Yeah, I mean, I liked
where
everything
it makes
about.
like the pocket disappear. I'm into all of it.
But here's what's fun about that is that, yeah, we got introduced to Henry Cavill's character, but we also had Angela Bassett, we had Alec Baldwin, we've had Anthony Hopkins has been in that role before, Lawrence Fishburne. So I do see Ethan Hunt maybe transitioning into a role like that. I
can
do
see
not
that.
think that they would kill off the character of Ethan Hunt.
No.
Is there any doubt in y'all's minds that he's going to retire and maybe even still be part of the universe and be working around in an office position, but I don't think he's meeting his fate.
Wow. Now I don't know. I was like totally convinced. When you started that sentence, I was like, they'll never kill Ethan Hunt. But now I'm trying to imagine Tom Cruise being like, yeah, I'll come back and do a cameo. And I just don't see that happening. I feel like he is the star or he's not coming. Like he has a very large sense of his own worth, and justifiably so. So I have a hard time imagining him just showing up and being like the Bosley to like tap into another, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, he would just kind of come by and like hand things off.
Well, Rocha, the only time he has done a cameo before is when he was Grossman in Tropic Thunder. Does he come back as that character in Mission Impossible?
It would be interesting to see him handing out China's my territory. No, we'll see. But to me, this is an interesting point you bring up. Would he transition into this Alec Baldwin spot? A lot of rumors have been going around that he would take the Hal Jordan spot for Green Lantern and like train Kyle Rayner or Jon Stewart to take over the actual Green Lantern in the movie. So is this leading man transitioning into the whole older leading man handing off the torch to the younger leading man position? Baldwin was a leading man in the 80s and 90s. People forget that. So he's had to do it. Why can't Tom Cruise do it? Sean Connery's done the same thing. So it's certainly possible. It's tough, but it's certainly possible.
Beetlejuice, Miami Blues.
Exactly, those kinds of things. The Getaway. It would also be a way for him to stay part of this franchise and have the occasional stunt scene or action scene and then flying somewhere. It would still keep him in the franchise, and you'd still pitch Tom Cruise as being part of the franchise, but they'd have to find the right person or right actor or actress to take the Ethan Hunt mantle.
And I'm glad you bring up the Hal Jordan speculation that we've heard forever about Tom Cruise is possibly stepping into some role in a Green Lantern now reboot in the DCU or whatever comes after the DCU. Does this news that they're filming Mission Impossible back to back, does that mean that him playing a Hal Jordan in a Green Lantern is dead, or do you think that actually it enhances the chances of seeing Tom Cruise in a Green Lantern because they are filming two Mission Impossible movies back to back, and maybe that does his clear schedule for another summer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it'd be interesting to see how this develops because it's kind of crazy we haven't gotten him into a superhero, like a mass. Has he ever done a superhero movie? I don't think so, right?
Cruise? No.
I mean, I know he's effectively a superhero.
Yes.
He's Ethan Hunt.
Like, in real life, he's a superhero.
Yeah, where he's just like, I'm going to jump off this building. What?
Yeah.
I broke my foot. I'm going to do it again.
Him and Vin
Don't worry
Diesel
about
are
it.
essentially superheroes.
Yeah, but it's like they're superheroes in that way of like where Fast and the Furious is like sort of a superhero movie, but not technically. But yeah, I think it would be really exciting to see him do that, and that might very well be that they're locking this down, and it might just be a scheduling point at this point because like when will the Green Lantern thing happen?
Rocha, you want him to play Green Lantern?
I do. I want to play Hal Jordan. He'd be a great Hal Jordan, but I think what you bring up is correct, and I think what you mentioned, Mark, is absolutely right. Doing these back to back, it takes a long time for these DC films. Look how long Aquaman took 3 years. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time to kind of write the script, get the thing going, find time in the schedule, what have you. You have time to have these other DC films develop. Then you bring in Green Lantern, and once you've established a new Justice League, then you bring in Tom Cruise possibly to do that. So there's time, and he can do that. And in Top Gun 2, he's going to be essentially being that mentor to the young pilot. So already you're seeing a little bit of what we may see his career turn into. So Green Lantern, 3 years from now, him doing it is fine.
Yeah, he might be a mentor to the young pilots in the first act of Top Gun 2. And then the movie's called Top Gun Maverick. I want to see you get back in a plane, or else I'm going to have you flying a plane full of rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong. Our next story is the box office. Aquaman passed the $1 billion mark. Congratulations to Aquaman. However, it was not number one at the domestic box office. That's because it's been in release for 4 weeks now. And The Upside debuted, starring Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston. That took number one, $19.6 million. Just on its heels was Aquaman, $17.3 million. At number three, It's a Dog's Way Home. You know the dog's going to survive. Hence, above $10 million for that opening take. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse at $9 million. And rounding out the top five is Perry Nemiroff's favorite movie of all time. I read that wrong. One of Perry Nemiroff's liked films so far this year, Escape Room, $8.9 million. John Rocha, are you finally ready to admit that you loved Aquaman now that it passed $1 billion at the box office?
No, I'm sorry, I can't. I really did not like that movie. But I respect the fans going back over and over again to see it and supporting this movie. There you go. You got what is this about? It's a business. I say this, Perry and I argue so all the time. Art versus commerce. Aquaman is commerce. They made $1 billion. DC fans showed up. They showed up in droves over and over and over again to support this movie, and it's still going strong now, over $1 billion. That's incredible. So you got to give it props for that. But The Upside, this is an interesting thing to look at and analyze, because Cranston isn't like Cranston movies blow the doors off the box office. Kevin Hart has a strong following in the black community, strong following in the comedy community. With all the stuff that happened with the Oscars and his press tour recently to kind of turn that situation around to be like, well, now I don't want to do the Oscars now. I deserve better, blah, blah, blah. That might have played into people coming out to support him and see this movie, because this is a remake of a French movie that is fantastic, The Untouchables. If you don't see, not The Untouchables, if you haven't seen that yet, it's an incredible French film, and to see this remake, I was shocked that it made this much, and it has to be the Kevin Hart audience. I don't think it's the Cranston and Breaking Bad audience coming to see Bryan Cranston, because where were they for the Franco movie? They weren't there for the Franco movie. Why him? So, this is not you have to look at Kevin Hart on this.
Yeah, I think Kevin Hart, he did have a press tour because he would show up on shows, and the fact that he's willing to talk about a controversy where most celebrities would want to shy away from that, he said he embraced it. And I think that is the reason. That's probably the PR strategy behind his appearance on so many talk shows recently, is that I'll talk about that, and I also get to plug Escape Room. That'd be a weird show if you plug Escape Room, which is your competition. The Upside. Do you see that the same way, that maybe this was Kevin Hart being able to turn a negative situation into a positive for his new movie?
I mean, I think that's an element of it. He's still very popular. I covered the Kevin Hart controversy a lot, and I heard from a lot of his fans who are going to follow him literally into Fyre. So they will see anything he does. But this didn't make... this was $7 million shy of his last movie's opening weekend, Night School. So I think it's also just that it's January, and that kind of fits in, and people are starting to see some of the things that people have been talking about for Oscar contenders that are starting to get wider releases. And look at those three movies. They have so little in common. It's a weird time at the box office. So
it's January.
Yeah, it's January. This is the month where you get movies that studios are like, I don't know. And sometimes they're great. Memorably, Paddington opened in January. And we were all very dubious because the first trailers were horrifying. Yep. And then Paddington is the greatest thing that's ever happened to cinema.
It was the greatest thing that happened to January since Taken came out.
Right. We're all on that page. But you have, and there's even movies coming up this month I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but there's movies coming up this month that are so bonkers. So January is a fun move where you're just it's a grab bag. I feel like it's really hard to gauge box office in general, but especially during January, where this was a Weinstein movie that looked like it was going to get buried because of that whole scandal. And then when he came out to promote it, why I think it's interesting that it did as well as it did is that when Kevin Hart came out to promote The Upside, you didn't see The Upside in headlines. You heard Kevin Hart said this and this and this. Kevin Hart apology tour. Kevin Hart won't apologize. Kevin Hart is an ally, isn't an ally. The conversation was not about The Upside. The conversation was about everything around it. However, the people who were in his corner had a lot of opportunity to be like, why? Oh, he has a movie.
Yeah.
So I think that was a part of it, but I feel like it was a mixed bag where there were definitely people that were like, thank you. I'm good.
What do you think about, what's your thoughts on, what do you think Glass is going to do? This is a January release. Do you think Glass is going to be insane, or is it going to fall prey to the January type of doldrums?
I think that Glass will do well in January. I think January is a time where I mean, speaking for me personally, but I think that a lot of people at this point, you kind of want something that's just escapist and weird. And, you know, I've seen so many amazing movies in November and December and even October that are like award season stuff, and they're moving films, and they're the kind of thing that you watch and you're like, oh, I need to be alone for a little while. So conversely, whether Glass is good or not doesn't matter, because I know where it's at Rotten Tomatoes. I'm seeing it tonight. Haven't seen it yet. I don't have an opinion on it.
I won't say anything then.
But I'm excited to see what it's going to be. And, you know, M. Night's always pretty interesting. And I think he's won back a lot of goodwill with Split and with The Visit. So I feel like Glass will do fine. I think it'll do really solid. And I honestly feel like the negative reviews might help it in opening weekend, because as a critic, I know there are a fair amount of people that like to be like, well, forget what you say. I'm going to see it anyway, which, okay, that's fine.
That's why I'm so intrigued to see what the audience scores are once they start rolling in for Glass. And you can find that on Rotten Tomatoes, too. The way they aggregate audience is a little different than critics, but it still is a number reflective. And we welcome your thoughts on Glass, as well as all the news that went on at the box office, whether it's in the live chat. I see a lot of y'all hanging out there right now on YouTube, on our podcast feed. Let us know your thoughts on all these movie stories. A couple quick notes. Maybe Keanu Reeves should have had some Oscars controversy because Replicas was his movie that came out, $2.5 million open. I think it was good for 13th, and that's not good enough for us to talk more about. So we move on to our next story, and that is a movie that is set to crush at the box office, just a matter of how hard, and that is Captain Marvel. It's now looking at a between $140 million to get this $180 million debut. That is a lot of money, and when you look at box office tracking for a movie that's coming out in early March, and we're not even in February yet, the tendency with box office tracking tends to be, here's the number that we're going to go ahead and start. It's a lot like a Vegas odds for a sporting event, where it's like, we're going to start the number here, and then it matriculates based on interest. I think that Captain Marvel has gone up considerably, and we still have more than a month to go. So, Kristy, do you see it going even higher than 140? How high can this movie get opening weekend?
That's such a good question. I feel like, okay, so the DC movies and the MCU movies are always an event, which always helps out with box office opening weekend. But this is especially an event because this is the first MCU movie that is going to be female fronted. And I feel like they're really leaning into that with the marketing. They also really seem to understand who Captain Marvel is as a character. And you're seeing fans who have been fans of that character for a really long time being very energized. And they just keep giving us more. So I think it's going to do huge. And if you look at the numbers of opening weekends of Marvel movies, the only one that is way up there that's not arguably a sequel is Black Panther, which, again, it is obviously a sequel. He was introduced in another movie, but it was a spin-off movie. And so you could make a similar argument here. But all the other ones are sequels. So I don't think it's going to get up there with like Avengers territory, but I think it's going to open incredibly strong, especially because I think you have this contingent that is going to feel galvanized about seeing ourselves represented. I mean, like that trailer where it's so focused on like she is a hero. I understand that for some people it sounds treacly or whatever, but it's a very powerful thing to see yourself represented on screen. I think that we saw that with Black Panther. I think we saw that last year with Crazy Rich Asians. There are communities that have been hungry to be seen on screen. And for finally this to come to an MCU audience, I think it's going to do amazing. And I also feel like the filmmakers are doing an amazing job because I love those directors. So I think it's going to be an incredible movie, and like the hype will be worth it.
It looks like a lot of elements that are contributing to this box office tracking, Rocha, and not the least of which is one of the points that Kristy brings up, is that when you look at Wonder Woman breaking $100 million at the box office a couple of years ago, and that was the first female-led DC film, that movie doing over $100 million, plus the fact that you have a lot of interest, not just in the character of Captain Marvel herself, but also where Captain Marvel may be going, where she might be helping, how she may bring some people back from a certain snap that happened last year. There's a lot of Avengers Endgame interest in this movie too, so it's going to add up to some boffo box office.
Oh, absolutely. And people have been waiting for this one, right? People, since the beginning. What's this, the 21st M or 22nd M? Well, I guess it'll be 21st by the time it comes out. You're like, finally, we've got a female-led Marvel movie, and it's tracking from that box office pro article 140 to 180. Anything is possible. After Black Panther, anything is possible. After Aquaman breaking $1 billion, anything is possible. So 140 to 180 might be, it's a good, but it might even be lower. It could break 200. You just never know what the audience is going to be for something like this, because people have been waiting for it. And I think that last featurette really did a great job of like, kind of calming down the fears that some people had about the first two trailers. There was all that controversy. Oh, she's she's not smiling. That stupid controversy or the other thing. And you're right. That other trailer.
I hope she never smiles.
There you go. Well, she does already in this featurette.
I regret smiling on this show. I won't do it again.
It's such a ridiculous thing, but like to see how they were giving each other a bunch of crap, Nick Fury and her. You understand this is the kind of film it's going to be. It's going to be a fun time, but it's also going to like expand the universe even more. And you're right, the Avengers Endgame stuff is going to be factored into this as well. So Marvel did a great job of setting this thing up for success, just like they did with Black Panther. Just really smart the way they've done this. So I think the sky's the limit for this particular movie, and especially after that featurette, because it looks even greater than the first two trailers led you to believe it was going to be. So I'm excited, and if it breaks 200, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Black Panther did it in February,
right.
So why can't this do it when it's being released?
The pre-sale numbers are huge already, right? Like, isn't their third ever, right?
Third highest in the MCU, behind Avengers: Infinity War and Black Panther. As of right now, that's according to Fandango. So that's some nice company to be in.
I mean, I've already, a friend contacted me as soon as the tickets were available, and they were like, "I'm buying 10 tickets. Let me know if you want one." And it's happening during South by, and I'm actually really excited. I'm going to South by. I love covering South by. But Friday morning, that's for Captain Marvel. And I will probably get to see it a little bit ahead of time. I'm usually invited to press screenings, which is very exciting, privilege to have. But I want to see it also with my friends and get to be in that environment. And let's do this. Let's celebrate this moment of not just representation, but also just, I really like the idea of a hero that Brie Larson is bringing to this. And she's just been killing it in every social media post and in every teaser, and I'm really, really pumped about this. I really enjoy superhero movies, and I like that this looks not like it's going to be something we've seen before, because I think the risk is it going to look too much like a Captain America movie? And I don't think it does. I think it looks like its own distinct story. I'm really excited. And
everyone who's watching those trailers out there, enjoy Captain Marvel for the hero she is, but please be careful before you punch an old lady in the face on the bus. Make sure that she's a Skrull before you actually make contact. It's going to help your life out, trust me. I know from experience. Well, we mentioned Kristy got the chance to be on hand at the Critics' Choice Awards last night, and so did some of our other fellow Collider staff members, and they did a special episode of For Your Consideration. You can check out FYC's Critics' Choice recap on all the drama that went down last night, who won, who should have won, and who did you get to hang out with and have a drink with and take a selfie with if your name is Christian Harloff. Did you see? You got to meet Julia Roberts. It was a lifelong dream for him, so congratulations, Christian. We know it meant a lot to you. And I'm doing some stand-up in a couple weeks in New York City. I'm going to be in your stomping grounds, Kristy. I'm going to be at New York Comedy Club on January the 25th, and then January the 26th is the Movie Trivia Schmodown. I also have upcoming dates in Phoenix, Seattle, Chicago, and some other ones. You can get tickets at markellislive.com. Our next story involves Newark. Now, if you say, hey, Mark, what are there a lot of in Newark? I would say hotels near the airport. But apparently there's also Many Saints, and that is the title of the Sopranos prequel. Did you hear that? There's a Sopranos prequel, and it's called The Many Saints of Newark, and the movie has now added Jon Bernthal and Vera Farmiga to its cast. Alessandro Nivola is going to be the star of this film, and it's a prequel, like I said, that's going to follow him playing Dickie Moltisanti. Now, if that name sounds familiar, he's the father of Michael Imperioli's character on The Sopranos. I had to memorize all this stuff because I have not seen one full episode of The Sopranos in my entire life, and that was met with much rage from my panel. The episode of Sopranos I did watch is the one because I heard that they were playing poker with David Lee Roth in an episode, so I wanted to watch that. And the show looked interesting, but it looked like a lot of heavy-duty work, and you really got to get into it. So maybe I'll investigate The Sopranos before this movie. We're reporting on this story today because of the big news of Bernthal and Vera Farmiga, but the fact that David Chase is involved in this, the fact that it's a prequel, it might lead up to the time before Tony Soprano really came to prominence in Newark. Rocha, I know you've been there a number of times.
Yep.
Do you see Many Saints of Newark being a hit?
Newark is an interesting place. Here's what I'll tell you. I love this idea that Jon Bernthal and Vera Farmiga are part of this project. Vera Farmiga, to me, you look at The Departed, there's the elements of that possibly she'll bring into this film. You look at Bernthal, having watched the second season of Punisher, see what he can do with a really incredible role like that. I'm excited to see he's going to bring that edge, that hardness to this film. That being said, this prequel, in my mind, is maybe the dumbest idea I've heard in a long time, and it scares the living hell out of me because I love The Sopranos so damn much. It's in my top 3 TV shows ever made, and the fact that they're going to do a prequel that's not a TV series, but is a movie, giving David Chase's track record on movies, it does not excite me. The cast excites me. The project doesn't excite me. You know what cast news excites me? Rachel Zegler being cast as the lead in the new West Side Story, playing Maria, that Steven Spielberg is directing. That excites me. She's also from New Jersey, so seeing her step in as a 17-year-old high school girl to take the role of Maria, that's exciting.
So this is
that's
not the most exciting New Jersey-based
That's the exciting New Jersey news.
That's
okay. But this is great casting for them, and hopefully this is a good movie. But my hopes are almost near zero that it's going to be a good idea.
Are you a Sopranos fan, Kristy? Does this sound like a good idea to you?
I don't think you're allowed to not be a Sopranos fan. I'm honestly surprised you said on a television that you have not seen it. No, I like the Sopranos a lot.
Too much.
I like binged a whole bunch of it and then had like nightmares about being stalked by gangsters and like had to take a breather before I dove back in. Like, it's an amazing show. Having said that, I'm always very dubious of stories that go, yeah, but how did we get there? I'm like, I don't know that I care a lot of time. And there are exceptions. For me, one of the rare exceptions of like a prequel movie that I thought was actually incredible was Ouija 2, the one that Mike Flanagan did. I forget what they had like a subtitle, but that was outstanding and so good. However, there's so much story that it's like, how much are they going to attempt to tie to? It makes me nervous. I feel like at this point we don't know enough about it for me to have a strong opinion, but I'm nervous. I'll say that. But the cast is incredible. I love Alessandro Nivola and have for ages because he can do anything. He can play like a skeezy hot guy, or he can be the weirdo brother in a Nick Cage movie. Like, he's all over the place. So like, he's a wild card I'm on board for. John Bernthal's great. Vera Farmiga is a goddess in our time. So like, the cast is incredible, which it's really smart that they're like, we're not going to tell you what this is about, but look who we've got.
Yeah.
And I will withhold a firmer judgment until we know more. But I understand. I absolutely understand your suspicion.
Yeah. Do we want to go through Moltisanti's dad?
Yeah, because like,
Moltisanti was such a f up. Do we want to see what his dad did?
Here's what I will allow.
And I know this because I did.
He raised him.
He I think he died when he was like
an infant
growing up.
Oh, was
yeah.
he?
Yeah, he was in there, and then he.
I want one moment where someone goes Christopher, and if that's there, then I'm fine. Then I'll allow this. If you accept that moment, if the origin of the first Christopher, I'll take it.
I almost want to spoil.
You don't know what that means because you don't watch the show. Ha!
I still giggled. I thought it was funny. It was well delivered.
Thank you.
It's true. Nivolo's a British actor, right?
I have no idea.
I think he's British.
He is a person who I feel like has no nation anymore because he has been in so many things. Yeah, I was like, no, I don't know. You're just amazing, and I have no idea where you're from anymore.
Jurassic Park 3. I think he's in Jurassic Park 3 as well. I think.
I don't recognize Jurassic Park.
Man, you're dropping a lot of random facts on the show.
Just saying, I'm a Schmodown guy. I think I'm right. Maybe. I don't know.
It was fun hanging with you at the Movie Trivia Schmodown Awards this past weekend. That'll be up on the 25th too, when I'm busy prepping for my stand-up act.
My girlfriend loved your stand-up act. You did a great job.
I didn't do stand-up. I hosted. There's a big difference.
I'm sorry. You doing 10-minute speech? That's goddamn stand-up, son. That was stand-up what you did to open.
Don't give away all my little tricks just yet. They can watch it on YouTube.
Oh, that's true.
On the Schmodown channel on January 25th. Okay, the Fyre Festival. The craziness that ensued during the Fyre Festival. Now, last week we talked about Netflix has its own Fyre Festival documentary that's going to focus primarily on the festival that became a disaster. That is called Whereas the Greatest Party That Never Happened, or The Greatest Party That Never Happened is the name of that. And now Hulu has its own Fyre Festival documentary, and this is going to be more on the fraudulent element of that and the actual person, Billy McFarland, who defrauded a number of investors. This is called Fyre Fraud, and we got a trailer here today. Kristy, did you get a chance to take a look at the Hulu trailer? Did you get a chance to take a look at the Netflix trailer? Which one did you think is more to you?
Well, I've seen both trailers, and I've seen one of the films. I've seen the Netflix one, and I have a review on Pajiba. What's interesting is today is when the embargo lifted, which meant critics were allowed to talk about the Netflix one, and that's when Hulu released the trailer. So if you Google Fyre, a lot of the Hulu trailers are coming up, so they're kind of stealing Netflix momentum right now.
Dirty pull, I love it.
It's kind of fantastic, but what's really exciting about this is you have these two documentaries, and you might think, do we need two documentaries about this fraud? Yes, because the Netflix one was produced in part by people who were a part of making that festival. So they are very familiar with what happened, and they speak to a lot of people who were inside that festival and everything that went wrong. However, the other doc has Billy, the big guy behind the whole thing. And like, they actually have an interview with him. So it's going to be interesting to see the two. I'm really excited to see the Hulu one because I've seen the Netflix one, and I don't think it pulls a lot of punches. It does make Billy the big bad guy, but there is plenty of blame to go around. And it does point questions at like, how much of this was a guy being deluded about what he could actually get away with, and how much of it was just outright fraud?
But if I can ask you this, because were you interested, or do you think you had the appetite for 2 documentaries before you saw the Netflix one? Or in a weird, ironic way, is the fact that you saw the Netflix documentary already piqued your interest for the Hulu one?
Yes, because the Netflix one is incredible. It's a really good documentary. If you have any interest in what happened at Fyre Fest, I think it's pretty informative, but you have to kind of keep in mind that the people you're talking to also made it happen, so they might be trying to save face a little bit, and you don't know how reliable some of their perspectives are on it, which is interesting, and I think honestly it's a really good movie, but also just the stuff they tell you is so bonkers about what they got away with and what happened, and also they talk about a lot of the victims that you weren't aware of, because we all followed it on social media, and it was really fun with that picture of the sandwich, and you were like, oh, you spent thousands of dollars to see Blink 182 and you got a cheese sandwich. But it also goes into like the people who put a lot of money into that festival that were just destroyed, or put a lot of work into that festival and never got paid. And so it talks about those people too, and I think it's a really interesting documentary. Having said that, when I saw the Hulu doc, I was like, I don't know that I need to watch another one of these, but then it ends with an interview with Billy where they're like basically like, what were you thinking? And in the trailer he doesn't give an answer, and I'm like, I want to know what he says. Not that I can trust him, because he has proven himself to be a flagrant liar repeatedly, but also I want to know. And like I was saying to somebody, a friend of mine, I'm really into true crime. So like I love a true crime story. I loved Can You Ever Forgive Me? It was my favorite movie of the year. I love when we investigate not just how a crime happened, but like what was someone thinking? Because like, it's insane that he thought he could get away with this. Like, they tried to put together an enormous festival with no infrastructure in weeks. Like, there is no part where that made sense. However, in The Imposter, which was a really amazing Bart Layton movie, they interview a con man that you know is a con man. And so you're watching all those interviews going, you're really charming, and I get why people fell for you, but also I don't know that I can believe anything you're saying.
That's the question. Is Billy so charismatic, or at least Rocha, you judging from watching this Hulu trailer, that you want to watch this documentary, or do you get the sense that, look, this is a charlatan, so this whole thing could be a sham because you can't trust him, and therefore the documentary is worth less in your eyes?
Yeah, I've already informed my girlfriend that I'm watching this tonight while she's doing laundry and packing up because we're moving into a new place. I'm like, this is what I'm watching tonight. Just letting you know this is happening, because this trailer looks incredible. And I love what you said at the end, because that's what hooked me when he said, are you a sociopath? And he just kind of stares at the camera and then looks off. Like, oh, and I saw American Animals last night for the first time. So
I'm so glad you referenced that. I didn't bring it up because I'm obsessed with that movie, but like no one saw it. I'm sorry, go on.
Well, Jeff Snyder won't stop talking about it. So we finally, like last night I was packing myself at my place and I was like, oh, this is on demand? Oh, I guess I'll watch it while I'm packing. And it's an engrossing film. It's
also
a good
by
film.
Bart Layton.
Yes, that's why I brought it up, because you mentioned The Imposter. So this feels like in that vibe. You know, like, is he playing, like when they're interviewing Chaz and Chaz, they ask that question of him, and is he, or did he not? And so you go, oh, okay. And this feels the same way when they ask the question at the end of this trailer, are you a sociopath? What did you do? But to me, the interest is also fascinating, because apparently the Netflix one is more from like the inside out, and this is more like from looking from the outside in. And I like that. I want to see how they pulled this off. I want to see who was smart enough to use these millennials in a certain way, and then use the power of it to get all these people to spend their money and then get completely screwed over. And then what happens to the people as this goes along, and then how they try to escape blame for it. So there's fascination on both sides. True crime especially. I think both these documentaries, although they're released in the same week, can be complementary documentaries because you're seeing it from both sides, and you get to enjoy a very thorough exploration of this insane situation.
Yeah, and I think that's what Hulu is obviously banking on, but I think that Hulu and Netflix both realize, look, if you have competing documentaries, one hand may watch the other one if they're well produced, and you know, at least we know one half of that is from our reliable source here, is that it may make you want to watch the other one a little bit more. So that's my advice to all you couples out there, is decide who's sitting on their ass and watching Hulu, and who actually has to do laundry and pack so you can get ready to move into a new place. You guys are a true 50-50 relationship.
I did it last night.
Sure you did. Sure you did. When you were watching football, I'm sure you were very active.
I was going to say, wait a minute. Didn't we already establish your alibi for last night?
The football was done by 7 o'clock.
We knew what you were doing the entire weekend, Outlaw.
That's not true.
We got your paper trail. I'm going to remind you guys that we're going to take some of your live tweets at the end of this show. So go ahead and start tweeting us at Collider Video. Use the hashtag Collider Movie Talk. One more story to get to, and that is what I would call a Nemiroff special, because remember Final Destination? Remember we had 5 of them, and then the 5th one ended up in a cool way. And we're like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. But that was really the Final Destination. No, it wasn't. Did you really think it was going to be the last fight? Of course it wasn't. Now we have news that a new Final Destination is being imagined, and I say imagined because this is being touted as a reimagining of the franchise. Is this an actual reboot? Should it be an actual reboot? It's got some good company involved, and that would be Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton. They are currently writing the script as per a report from The Hollywood Reporter. They also worked on Saw and The Collector, amongst other notable flicks. So, John Rocha, we are getting more Final Destination. Should it be a reimagining, a reboot? Are we ready for a new version, a new franchise for Final Destination?
Listen, I would love to answer this question, but I don't host The Witching Hour. Perry Nemiroff, our executive producer, hosts The Witching Hour. She is just off camera. She should step in and answer this question for me. I'm calling in a sub from the bench to come in and answer this question. Yeah, because I couldn't possibly.
Well, you should have planned this better because I could have gone to Kristy first.
Oh, well, then go to Kristy first, and then I'll get Perry.
Just tease The Witching Hour.
All right, there you go. Do you discuss it on The Witching Hour? Okay, well then never mind. I'll give you my quick answer, and then
I think, Adam, I found out why I host this show. I think we were just exposed. I will go to Kristy now but I am curious on your take as well. Is this going to be a reimagination? Is this going to be a proper reboot? What are our terms for this one?
In horror, it doesn't matter. I mean, like I love horror movies. Perry knows this. Is actually how she and I became friends. Was that we would talk aggressively about horror movies to people, and they're like, "Do you know Perry? Do you know Kristy? Because you guys should know each other." And, you know, a lot of our friendship is talking obsessively about horror movies. But it doesn't really matter if it's a reboot or a reimagining or whatever. What you're taking is the premise. The premise that, like, if you survive this moment in time that you should have conceivably died, what if death were out to get you? Which is just scary all the time. I don't care how they plug and play it into any environment. It's a really good premise. It's just going to be a question of what kind of horror they want to make it. The fact that it's the Saw guys makes me a little less excited personally, because the Saw things are not so much my jam. I feel like it's just, that's kind of like a very grim sensibility, where part of what I like about Final Destination was there's a sort of campiness to it, where like the deaths are so bonkers. Like they're so much fun, where you're just like, oh, whoever wrote this is upsetting.
And they just, like you know it's coming, and you want to, well, it depends on which character it is, but sometimes you want to step through the screen and just be like, no, don't plug in your toothbrush. It's not going to work right.
Everyone dies with an electrical toothbrush. Everyone knows that. But to their credit, though, the Saw guys...
You're going to choke on Listerine.
I mean, to the credit of the Saw guys, like, obviously they have written a bunch of wild deaths for years and years and years now. So it does sound like a dream team in that scenario. I was just kind of hoping for somebody who has a slightly more comic bent, not because I want these to be horror comedies, but like I like the wildness of certain things. Like even in Escape Room, there are some really weird moments in that movie, and I that's what I want to see. So if the Saw guys are going to bring me that, awesome, cool. I had a little bit of reservations because the Saw movies for me are very grim, so they're less fun for me, but they're imaginative, and I feel like this will be a really fun, re-envelopment of the franchise. And it's a franchise that can go on and doesn't really need a central, like, I know that, like, they were like, oh, this is a series, but it's like, the continuing thought is just the death is out to get you.
We understand the theme very clearly when we sit down to watch any one of these movies. I'd say the only one you really had to do any sort of preparation for was 5, but we didn't really know that until the end of 5. Kristy mentioned that that's how her friendship with Perry was forged, through horror movies, which is a great way to actually meet people when you think about it. A lot of people dying on screen, but people coming together off it. Perry Nemiroff, Haley Fouch do host The Witching Hour, and recently they had an interview with Death himself. Tony Totti came in. The ladies were big fans of Mr. Todd's appearance. Is he going to be appearing, Rocha? Should he appear in a reboot of Final Destination, or is it time to cut bait and move on and start completely fresh?
Look, I'll never say Tony Todd shouldn't be in something. He should always be in something. Tony Todd's fantastic. He doesn't just do horror. He does a bunch of things. So to have him in this back again would be great. This is the one franchise that I go back and watch installments of because the deaths are so bonkers. The Mary Elizabeth Winstead one is my favorite one. Who knew you could die in a drive-thru? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that can happen in that. So I enjoy watching those films for the deaths and the melodrama that surrounds the deaths more than anything, because everyone's always trying to tell you, don't do this, nobody listens, and they die. And so the elevator one was great as well, getting cut in half. So there's all kinds of stuff. So, but my question is this: if you what is the reimagine? Are the rules different now? What is changing here? What is this reimagining supposed to be? Why are you reimagining if it's new people every time? And didn't 5 become like a prequel or something like that? Is that what it was? And so you're like, oh, Did
You haven't seen the movie? There you
yeah,
are.
40 year or 30, whatever it is, 20 year spoiler alert. But like, this is what's so confusing to me. It's like, what is this reboot going to be, or reimagining going to be? Are there different rules for death? And if there are, how is that going to work? But I share your skepticism about the Saw writers. I share your skepticism, and I want to see something enjoyable come out of this, because I did enjoy seeing these rare horror franchise that I would go back and see multiple installments.
To me, it's like the idea of what the death makes us feel.
Right.
And in the Saw movies, it's almost like one of those grip tests or something, where it's like, can you handle how gross and weird this is? And like, I would prefer it to be a little more like the classic Final Destination, where you're more just like, oh no, what? And like, it's not so grim as it is just crazy and fun and like a little silly. But I
you don't want a
understand-
message, is what you're saying. You don't want a message necessarily.
Here's what worries me is that whenever people go, I'm going to make a reboot and I'm going to make it gritty, I feel like all of a sudden you lock yourself into these worlds. I want them to have the freedom to get to do something interesting and new with this, and I don't want it to be Saw meets Final Destination. I want it to be its own thing. So I'm curious to see what they do.
We have a lot of good comments about this. A lot of people are very opinionated about Final Destination.
I believe it.
Adam Siri says that Final Destination 1 and 2 were great, went downhill after that. Dang MQ says Kristy needs to return in the future. Gorlak says Pete getting crushed by a pane of glass. We'll see if they can. And Raquel CP has a sentiment that a lot of people do, that Devon Sawa needs to return. And finally, Thalonia says that Tony Totter interview was awesome. Well, if you are a fan of The Witching Hour, whether you're a new fan based on the Tony Totter interview, you've been following since its inception, there's a new interview with Karen Kusama in the latest episode of The Witching Hour. She's the director of the new Nicole Kidman film, Destroyer. She also did The Invitation and Jennifer's Body. I believe she worked on that too. So good lineage, and I'm sure that the ladies had a fun time with Miss Kusama here in studio. We also had a new episode of Collider Live this morning. Get a new one tomorrow at 10 a.m. And, of course, Movie Talk going to be back at the regularly scheduled post-snap for Mark Ellis hour of 4 p.m. in the PST. You guys did do Collider Sports Time this morning.
Yeah, we did.
Give me a quick update on how Jared Haben is feeling.
Jared Haben was fantastic. He was so happy the New England Patriots won. He wore a Patriots shirt. Josh Pakuga went off on NBA athletes versus NHL athletes. Him and Matt Nose got into it. It's a lot of fun this episode. A lot of fire being thrown in this episode as we discuss the NFL, the NBA, and little Snoop Dogg doing some NHL commentary for the Kings over the weekend.
I did hear that today, and it was delightful. We're going to go to our live Twitter questions. Like I said, you can tweet us anytime at Collider Video. Use the hashtag Collider Movie Talk. We do a couple quick ones and get out of here. Some news that came out this weekend. Craig Brewer is going to be directing the new Coming to America film. And based on that news, John Ashford says, with the announcement of Coming to America 2, what Eddie Murphy side character are you wanting to see show up the most? I know not everybody may be the biggest Coming to America fan, so you don't have to get the characters' names, but for me, it really boils down to Saul, who's the old Jewish guy in the barbershop, or Randy Watson, the lead singer of Sexual Chocolate.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be Randy, right? I don't know. It's been a minute since I watched that movie, but like, any way he wants to come in, I'm game. Like, the characters in that movie are so memorable, and I also just want the fashion to aspire. Because before we had all the wonders of Wakanda, we had Coming to America, and like, it was amazing. As long as he looks amazing, I'm on board.
From the land of Zamunda all the way to Queens, New York, John Rocha. Which Eddie Murphy side character needs to show up in Coming to America 2?
The barber, for God's sakes.
The head barber?
The head barber. All three of those guys from the barber shop need to come back. I don't know if that third gentleman is still alive, but Arsenio and Eddie certainly need to come back. And Cuba Gooding should come back and do another cameo like he does in the original Coming to America, getting his haircut. He has one line. So to me, that would be fun to see. But the barber shop, all three of those guys need to still be there in that place.
All right, we go to our last question, and that comes from our good friend Ed Harrell. See you in a couple weeks, Ed. And he's a big New York City guy. Hey, Mark, John, and welcome to Kristy. Our question is, with the Critics' Choice picking some different winners than the Golden Globes, just give me we don't have to get into specific movies here, but what is the more likely Oscar pick? So if you're looking at the winners from the Critics' Choice or the winners from Golden Globes, which is the better list to look at as you're filling out your Oscar pool?
I mean, the thing is that critics, I don't think any critics are allowed to vote in the Academy, so they neither matters in the long run. I mean, I know you're trying to figure out what the hype is. I honestly don't know, because the thing that's happening this year, there were so many amazing movies that had very vocal contingents. that it's hard to pick a front runner. And I think that's what you're seeing is like with the surprise at the Golden Globes about Green Book and Bohemian Rhapsody, a lot of critics domestically weren't as interested in those movies, but there, things like The Favorite, a lot of people really love The Favorite, but some people think it's too weird. Like, I'm personally a Can You Ever Could Forgive Me stan. I'm going to keep mentioning that movie as much as we can. But like also like A Star Is Born had huge momentum out of TIFF. I honestly and it's like, this is my job to know who's going to get nominated or at least have a beat on it. And at this point, I just can't tell. It seems like every day there's a new possibility of what it's going to be.
John Rocha, any of the winners from Critics' Choice stand out to you as maybe that's the way to go as opposed to what went down at the Golden Globes?
I wouldn't be surprised if Gaga takes that Oscar. A lot of people were saying Glenn Close, but I don't think enough people have seen that movie. And so I would be surprised if she slides in and take that. Mance and I were having lunch today with Snyder, and they mentioned, Julianne Moore with Still Alice snuck in there, took that award, blah, blah, blah. So that's the one that stuck out to me. I thought Gaga was going to take that Golden, so to see her not take it, but take the Critics' Choice was interesting. So
but
I wonder.
She tied with Glenn at the Critics' Choice.
Exactly. A good point. But like that gives me an idea that there's an interest in her building. And I think that whole thing with Bohemian Rhapsody is going to help A Star Is Born in the long run with the Oscars. I mean, my personal choice is First Man. I know it's not a lot of people's personal choice, but I love First Man. I think that's my favorite film of last year. I wish that would get some momentum, but it's not good.
What other show are you going to tune into and here? It's going to come down to Can You Ever Forgive Me versus First Man for the Oscar. We'll see how it all plays out because the nominations are about to be announced. Until that happens, it's hard for me to bet between Perry and Kristy as to who's going to win that Oscar pool, but I think maybe this year some meatball shop should be riding on that. Kristy Puchko, I want to thank you so much for making your debut with us. Please come back anytime you want to come to the West Coast. Hopefully it's not raining the next time you make an appearance.
I was told it was nice here. I don't know what happened.
We need the rain every so often. I'm proud of everybody because I was on the 405 for a long time today and everybody was very well behaved. Good drivers out there. LA is known for horrible drivers in the rain. Not today, baby. We're turning the whole thing around in 2019. Kristy, where can all the kids find you out there and your wonderful works?
Oh, well, I write all over the internet, but you can find me every day at pajiba.com. I also write for Sci-Fi Wire and Riot Material, but you can find me on Twitter at Kristy Puchko. That's KRISTYPUCHKO. And I have career highlights at decadentcriminals.com. So you can go somewhere where I put all of my reviews together since I'm everywhere.
And maybe next time you have a party, go, because if Kristy's having a party, there's a chance John Legend and Chrissy Teigen could show up.
What?
More on that as it develops. John Rocha, you can be found at The Rocha Says.
Yeah, I'm following Kristy right now. I didn't. John Legend, I'm down
I
with
met
that.
them last night. They were very sweet.
Oh, yeah.
They were very
no
they're
surprise. Well, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah. At The Rocha Says on Twitter and Instagram. Collider Sports Time, all the stuff we're doing there. Got a lot of stuff coming up this week as well, and some Super Bowl stuff coming down the pipe. We've got two really great guests we're hoping to get on the next couple of weeks from the NFL Network and from other networks who want to come on and talk Super Bowl with us. So growing slowly but surely.
I'm sorry. That's a tough thing to throw anybody in and say, hey, John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. Anyway, Rocha, what about you?
Yeah, right.
My name is Merely Mark Ellis. We'll throw it to the wide to say goodbye. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Collider Movie Talk. We'll see you tomorrow bright and early, 4 p.m. in the PT. Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode of Collider Movie Talk. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. And if you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.